Hello, welcome to my business Capstone. My name is Jacquelyn Laughery, and I am excited to share my journey with you. My journey. Introduction of my family. I'll start with my early life, then my mother and her wife, my father and his wife, my biological father and his family, and then my siblings. Nueta Hidatsa Saanich College is where I've earned my degree. I earned my associates in 2017. I took a 5-year break to work on my career, and then in 2024, I will be graduating with my bachelor's degree. My degree plan. I'll discuss some classes that I have taken and highlight some projects that I have accomplished. Highlighted projects include poster presentations, PowerPoint presentations, brochures, secondary research papers, a product development, a game that I created, and a marketing book. The Earth Lodge model. Spirituality, community, future, and culture are all the 4 pillars of the Earth Lodge model. My takeaways from the MHA Nation, as I've lived here for 12 years, are something that I would like to discuss during my project. And lastly, I'd just like to discuss where am I going to go from here now that I've graduated. I was born in the Helena Valley in Montana in the early summer of 1990. I am a second-generation descendant of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. I spent my early months with my grandmother and mother. My father adopted me when I was less than 2 years old. Then along came my little brother, the rock that I needed for the rest of my life. My family moved to Washington State when I was 4 years old. This became home to me even though I had roots embedded in Montana. The Pacific Northwest is where I learned to fish, explore, and mourn. My mother, Patricia, was raised in the Helena Valley in Montana by her parents, Janice and Bert Jory, alongside her sister, Kelly, and her brother, Sean. My mother's wife, Regina, who prefers to go by Gina, was raised by her mother, Charlotte, between Helena, Montana, and Emmett, Idaho, alongside her now estranged sister. My father, Shane, was raised by his father, Lloyd, on a Black Angus ranch in Whitehall, Montana, alongside his brother, Dustin. My father's wife, Rebecca, who prefers to go by Becky, was raised by her mother, Kathy, in Puyallup, Washington, alongside her sister, Sarah. All 3, Rebecca, Kathy, and Sarah, are enrolled members of the Duwamish tribe. My biological father, Anthony, who prefers to go by Tony, was raised during the school year by his mother, Walleen, and stepfather, Gary, alongside his brother, Lester, a cousin, Trina, and a step-sibling. During the summers, he was raised by his biological father, Bob, and his wife, Vicky, alongside their 2 adopted children, Julie and John. He was born in England, but spent much of his childhood between Montana and Washington. He is a first-generation descendant of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe. My biological father's wife, Shauna, was raised by her mother, Bev, in Spokane Valley, Washington, alongside her sister, Kathy, and her brother, Steve. Through them, I have one sister, Antana, born in 2002, and one more brother, Jeremiah, born in 2000. My brother, Brandon, is the only sibling that I grew up with. He is 18 months younger than me, and we have always been very close. He is my rock, my best friend, my keeper of secrets, and my biggest protector. He currently lives in Washington State with his wife Elizabeth and their 3 children, 4-year-old twin daughters, Annabelle Lee and Amelia Day, and a 4-month-old son, Alan J. He owns his own pilot company, helping drivers haul large loads across the West Coast. My sister Antana and I have grown closer now that we are older. She's 12 years younger than me, and I did not get the chance to meet her until she was 8 years old. She is currently building a tiny home in Pablo, Montana, and running the bookstore at Salish Kootenai College. She took a break from her education but plans to return soon to finish her degree in environmental science. My NHSC journey begins here. My first semester was in the fall of 2015, where I was seeking a business degree. I graduated in the spring of 2017 with an Associate of Arts in Business Administration and Management. My NHSC journey ends here. I started taking classes for my bachelor's degree in the fall of 2022 and continued taking classes through this semester, fall of 2024. On December 13th, I will walk across the stage and I will receive my diploma for Bachelor of Arts, Business Administration and Management. In the fall of 2022, I took 4 classes: Business Internship, Principles of Management, Spreadsheet Applications, and Economic Development on Tribal Land. In spring of 2023, I took 6 classes: Human Resource Management, Small Business Management, Business Ethics, Entrepreneurship and New Business Venture, Archery 1, and Archery 2. In the fall of 2023, I took 5 classes: Managerial Accounting, Operations Management, Management Information System, Strategic Management, and Tribal Government. In the spring of 2024, I took 3 classes: Business Finance, Tribal Enterprise, and Macroeconomics. In the summer of 2024, I took 1 class, Principles of Marketing. In the fall of 2024, I'm taking International Business and Business Capstone. Highlighted projects. Highlighted projects include poster presentations, PowerPoint presentations, brochures, secondary research papers, product development, a game that I created, and a marketing book. This poster presentation was done in my macroeconomics class. This poster project was a group project, and we looked at China and India. We had to research agriculture, technology, handicraft, business process outsourcing, service sectors, and manufacturing for both of these countries and put it onto a poster and present it to the class. For this project, I had to create a poster for my human behavior and organization class. We were talking about the environmental context. For this specific poster, I looked at a company's mission statement and looking at strategic plans and strategic goals, and then moving down into the business's tactical goals and tactical plans and operational goals and operational plans, and making sure that all of those 6 elements within an organization align with a business's mission statement. For this PowerPoint presentation, I completed this for my business capstone class when completing my game. I created a game, and this was the PowerPoint presentation that I presented to a few classmates before playing the game for the first time. During this PowerPoint presentation, I go into detail about what is in the box, the different pieces, the elements of the game, the board, and I go really into detail about the different elements on the board and the gameplay at different places on the board. I also go into the concept of the game, how to win the game, the point of the game, and then I go into explaining how to actually play the game. You then look at the board. We actually pulled up this PowerPoint presentation while we had the board in front of us. So we pulled up the board, we pulled up the presentation, and we began to play using the PowerPoint presentation as our guide. And I was able to explain to a few of my classmates using this presentation how to play and win my game that I created. For this next PowerPoint presentation, this was for my macroeconomics class. This was a group project with Mallory Wilson and Andrea Yellowbird. We had 6 mini projects within the whole of the project, not including the presentation at the end, which is this PowerPoint presentation. The first project was macroeconomics analysis, and in this one we looked at a table. Each leg represented land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, and we had to determine if macroeconomics could survive without one of the legs of the table. The second project was vocabulary creation. So we did a 15-word definition matching vocab, and Jimmy Petite completed this vocab game for us. The third project was create macro learning. So we did a brochure. For this brochure, you had 6 learning topics. The first one was open market operations. The second was competitive advantage. The third, inflation rates. The fourth, calculating GDP. The fifth, PPC, the production probability curve. And the last being long run and short run aggregate supply and demand. The fourth project was macro understanding, and this one we looked at FRED, the Federal Reserve Economic Data website. We looked at India and China as that was the 2 countries that we had selected for our project. The last project was apply. This is where we had to create the poster presentation of China and India that was previously shown. And the last one was macroeconomics unmembering. For this one, we had to create an economic system cartoon illustration. In this first brochure for operations management class, I was assigned chapter 5, which was demand forecasting. In this brochure, I discussed qualitative forecasting methods, quantitative forecasting methods, forecast error, measures of forecast accuracy, and tracking signals. And then at the end, I also go over chapter key terms. The second brochure is a brochure for macroeconomics. This was in the same group project where my PowerPoint presentation and poster presentation. And as discussed, the brochure covered 6 topics: open market operations, competitive advantage, inflation rates, calculating GDP, product possibility curve, and long run and short run aggregate supply and demand. My secondary research paper was completed for my tribal enterprise class. The time of crisis, a stock market crash through the World War II, 1929 to 1945, was a paper that I wrote explaining the American history and the impact that this time had on it, shaping the nation's identity and values for generations to come. The American people showed resilience, solidarity, and determination in the face of adversity and overcoming economic hardship and global conflict to emerge stronger and more united. This period of crisis tested the limits of the American people's endurance, but ultimately showcased their ability to rise to the challenge and build a brighter future for themselves and their country. Product development. I was able to create a concept for a board game, design the board game, and physically get a board game printed. This was done in my business capstone class for a midterm, and I had freedom to create any type of game that I wanted. So I pulled inspiration from some of my favorite classes. Macroeconomics was definitely one of my favorite classes, so I pulled concepts and ideas from international trade, and I obviously had to incorporate finance in some way, so I included bank loans and interest rate calculations into the game. My game is called Cantillion's Account, and in this game, players will go across the board in a strategic way to create a completed basket of goods for a country. They will get to the market, and at the market they will obtain a country that gives them the specified number of goods that they will need to collect by the end of the game. They will then navigate to the bank. They will pull a bank loan for their country, and they will then navigate to the stock market where they can trade. Players are able to trade good for good, good for investment, investment for investment, It is really up to the player at the stock market to decide, because all countries in the game are part of the World Trade Organization. The only caveat is that the player at the stock market has to make the same trade with any other country that they start a trade with during the same turn, because every country is part of the World Trade Organization. Then players will make their way to the brokerage firm. At the brokerage firm, they will try to sell a business for their country, and if they have a completed basket of goods, they can start the end of game trigger. You will then calculate your interest rate for your bank loans. You will then calculate all of your finances, your investors. If you're able to complete a basket of goods, you will get an additional bonus for that, and you will then calculate your capital gain. The point of the game is to get to the end of game trigger, but getting to the end of game trigger does not mean that you win the game. When the end of game trigger happens, the person who wins the game is actually the person with the highest capital gain. So you have to be strategic about the game that you play even before you get to the end of game trigger. I've played this game a few times with colleagues, with friends, and with classmates, and we actually have had a lot of fun with this game. We've kind of played a couple different variations of the game to try to make it a little bit shorter. This game is a pretty base game, kind of like Monopoly, and I've talked with classmates and my instructor about ways to create new versions of this game using different concepts for different learning objectives. This obviously is a learning objective for an economics or a business finance type environment, but this game could be transformed into a hospital and nurses, and it could be, instead of collecting a basket of goods for a country, you could be collecting a ingredient for a cure. And instead of being a country, you could be a hospital. And we've also talked about the possibility of using tribes instead of countries and trading goods amongst tribes. And there's just so many ways that you can make this game into a different version of the game. And I thought that was very exciting to realize that my concept for a game could be used in a multitude of ways to help many different classrooms learn through gameplay. My marketing book started out as a project for my marketing class. I originally wanted to do a commercial, as I thought video editing would be a fun experiment to dip my toes into, but after visiting with the radio station and it just didn't work out the way that we had hoped. So instead, I kind of shifted my gears towards a marketing book that I could create for my job. And so I created this book to provide advisors and instructors with a way of recruiting students when they were either during registration week or prior to registration week. My goal of this book was to give our staff all of the information that they needed for their degree plan, as well as financial aid options, all in one spot. So this book goes through each degree offered here on campus. It provides a copy of their degree plan for that designated year, as well as scholarship opportunities for that specific degree, grant opportunities for that specific degree, and it also lists whether that degree is Pell eligible or not. This was something that I thought up while in multiple meetings and understanding that financial aid is complicated and not every degree is the same. And so if I stand up and preach to a room full of people, my data that I'm providing isn't applicable to every single advisor in the room. And so this was a solution to a problem, and it was a way that I could provide a physical document to our advisors and other people on campus. It wasn't just specifically for advisors, it was just geared towards advisors for helping them understand the financial aid opportunities or the lack of financial aid opportunities for their specific degree. That way that they could best advise students moving forward. So this book was something that I worked really hard on. I took pictures of the building myself for the cover. I got in touch with our marketing director, who got in touch with the company that we were working with at the time and got the specific color codes so that all of the colors matched the specific marketing branded materials that we were already using here on campus. And I really wanted it to look as professional as possible. So I created this on Canvas and got it printed through Office Max. And that is what is presented. It's up here on the table if you would like to take a look at it. It also has a little bit of information about financial aid. It has data from the previous year. And it also has our cost of attendance for advisors to provide to students, as well as events for the upcoming year, the dates of those events and topics of those events. And then it has the link to our Facebook page so that when they are advising students, they can also have them follow our Facebook page so that they can have up-to-date, real-time opportunities for scholarships and events from our Facebook page. For this project, it was in my accounting class, and we were put into groups to purchase materials with a designated budget to build the strongest and most long-lasting Earth Lodge model that we could. Another bonus project that I completed was a grant process, and this was completed for my managerial accounting class. We were instructed to complete a process or a procedure that pertained to our job, and I completed a grant disbursement process. This went over the chain of command for each grant. It went over the communication between the departments, the business office, the financial aid office, and all of the grant directors. It also goes over how grants are dispersed actually in our system, in the business office's system, and down to the student accounts. And it goes through the history of each of the grants, what degrees are covered by what grants, and it really just goes into detail of all of the grant processes when it came to my portion of the job. The Earth Lodge model spirituality pillar is made up of 3 sections: livelihood, humility, and balance. In the livelihood section, this is about maintaining mind and body. For me, maintaining mind means keeping track of my mental health, taking care of my mental health, and making sure that I maintain a positive mindset and I keep my inner peace. For the body portion, for me, this just meant that I was listening to my body more, understanding its needs, getting plenty of sleep and nutrition to maintain my body at its best capabilities. The second section is humility. In this section, mostly it's about being humble and listening to others when they make space to teach you. I have a few examples of moments where people took time out of their day to teach me something, and I would like to explain that here. Mr. Charlie Moran has gone out of his way many times outside of the classroom to teach me about MHA, history, and culture. I've sat in his office, I've sat upstairs in the cultural center, I've sat out on a park bench during a cultural retreat with many of our academics and student services crew, and Charlie has made sure to take time and give space for me to learn the things that I have asked questions about, and he has gone beyond that in helping me understand MHA history in a way that nobody else has taken time. So I return his efforts in teaching me by giving him my full undivided attention and respect in those moments. Another example of this would be Miss Vernell Buckman. I can't tell you how many countless nights this instructor has gone out of her way researching a topic that I have brought up in the classroom that is slightly off of what we are discussing in class, and she takes her time that she does not have to do to research the questions that I have and brings it back to the classroom and gives me the answers and makes me think about different topics from a different angle than what our textbooks offer. For me, this was something that I respected, and I enjoy being challenged and I enjoy being pushed. So getting that one-on-one time with Vernell really, truly helped guide me in my education. It gave me a drive, and it gave me a purpose. And honestly, the classes that she taught me ended up being some of my favorites, and she really made it easy to be passionate about the topic that she was discussing, whether that was marketing, economics, or even managerial accounting. Vernell definitely makes it easy to fall in love with the things that you're learning about. Another example of this would be, as a student, I had the opportunity to be a part of ACES, and this last national conference, I got to sit down with the ACES Council of Elders and making space for the elders there and giving them my time, knowing that they're giving their time to provide insight and feedback and knowledge to the young people in ACES was something that I did not want to pass up. I wanted to go in with an open mind. I did have a couple questions and a couple concerns that I really was seeking guidance for. And that experience with the elders at the National ACES Conference is one that I will probably never forget. And then, of course, beyond that, you just have professional peers that you gain throughout professional career. I have been in my career currently for 9 years, and I have gained many networking peers that I have learned that I can rely on, and they can rely on me. We reach out to each other pretty often when we come across things that dump us, and we have all been there to help each other. So this is another example of making space for those who want to teach us and being humble when that opportunity arises. The last section of the spirituality pillar is balance. This one is about self-evaluation, and I think it is very important to self-evaluate to know if there is a balance or an imbalance in your life. I personally am a strong believer in therapy, and I also am a strong believer in feedback. Feedback is something that a lot of people will take as a negative criticism, but if you understand that feedback is something that is required for growth, you can turn that thought and the mindset around feedback from a negative mindset to a positive mindset, and you just shift the way that feedback is received. For me, if somebody's going to give me feedback, whether it's personally, professionally, within my education, I like to look at the feedback that they're giving me, take a step back, and really evaluate whether that feedback is something constructive. And if it is constructive criticism and feedback that is of value to improve something that I'm working on or something that I am doing, that is something valuable that will help me grow. Self-evaluation and taking in feedback from others, as well as, in my opinion, therapy, are all ways of maintaining balance in my life. The Earth Lodge model community pillar is made up of 3 sections: leadership, people, and teachings. Within leadership, I feel it is important to educate yourself on successful leadership strategies, and I have done this both through the Leadership Pipeline program, which was a 2-year project that I went through where I was matched with a mentor, and we went through a book, Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, and we discussed different strategies and real-life examples of how to be a successful leader no matter what came up. Another way of being a good leader, in my opinion, is to lead by example. And I have taken this to heart. I have tried to lead by example for the people who I know look up to me, classmates and colleagues. And I also make sure that I look up to a few people and I gain skills from them by watching them. And another thing is experience. For me, I came out of my shell when it came to leadership. After the experience with the Leadership Pipeline program, I was able to step into bigger tasks and project management skills that I wouldn't have been able to do without the leadership and confidence of being a well-rounded leader, which was a skill that I got from the Leadership Pipeline program. Leadership is definitely something that I am passionate about, and I hope to hone in my expertise when it comes to leadership. The second section in the community pillar is people. For me, people is mentorships and guidance from other people. Like I talked about previously with leadership, I had a mentor who I still communicate with on a pretty semi-regular basis. I have mentors here on campus and people who I know that even when I leave here, I will still have in my life to lean on for mentorship. Another thing is classmates. I could not be where I am today if it wasn't for my classmates. We have grown to be a family. Our business department is very strong and we're very close-knit and we have each other's backs. And I would not be here today about to graduate if it wasn't for the support and the guidance of my classmates. And I truly believe that we all have been each other's support system from beginning to end. Another opportunity that I had while being a student was being a member of ACES, the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, and this gave me the opportunity to meet people across the nation in fields that I would not have been able to have access to if it wasn't for being a part of this student organization. I had the privilege of being our ACES public relations officer last year and this year. That has given me the opportunity to meet with students here on our campus. It's given me the opportunity to communicate with people in our community. The third section in the community pillar is teaching. Teaching is something that I feel like goes across all of the pillars, but for community, for me, this meant the teachings from the community. This was the teachings from the people around me. And to me, I just took this as being humble and having big ears and having an open heart to listen to the teachings of the people around me in the community. I was able to not only experience some wonderful opportunities to gain knowledge from community members here at MHA, but also I was able to give feedback and get feedback so that I can continue growing. And then for me, I was able to go above and beyond with my instructors, and I was able to connect with my instructors one-on-one, ask those questions, and not be afraid to further myself beyond the classroom. Sometimes you get stuck in the mundane, this is my homework and this is all I have to do. But if you really want to push yourself, our instructors are here to teach us, and they are here because they're passionate about what they do. And they may at times get stuck in the mundane of teaching, but when somebody goes out of their way to challenge them, not in a negative way, but in a exciting way and a passionate way, the amount of teaching and the amount of knowledge that I have gained in those moments outweighs the moments in the classroom, because you're getting a piece of the instructor and you're getting knowledge from the instructor that you wouldn't have gotten just in the classroom. So making time and giving space for instructors and community members and leaders in the community who you can take time out of your day to go ask the questions and be willing to listen to their teachings, in my opinion, you're going to gain the most knowledge from those people. Earth Lodge Pillar Future is made up of 3 sections: growth, determination, and industriousness. Within growth, this is about acquiring knowledge and growing in knowledge. The ways that I have been able to accomplish this are obviously through taking courses here at NHSC. I have also done many trainings, whether those were virtual or in person. I have taken a few CEUs. I have self-researched many topics, including ones for my job and personal hobbies, interests. As a student, I have been able to participate in ACES and AHEC, and I have gained quite a bit of knowledge through both of those. And then we have many campus events that I have participated in, or I have run myself and had to gain knowledge in order to run a smooth and potentially educational event. And so those opportunities have all given me the ability to acquire knowledge in one way or another. The second section of the future pillar is determination. Determination is something that I wouldn't have necessarily thought that I had a whole lot of before living here in North Dakota. I moved here in 2012, and in 2014 I was diagnosed with my rare eye condition, and this meant that eventually I would have no central vision. And I could have let that crumble me. I could have let that knowledge give me fear of doing anything new or pursuing my dreams. But the people around me and the support that I had at the time pushed me to still follow my dreams. So in 2015, I started as a student here at NHSC, and shortly after, in 2016, I started my career here at NHSC, and I have pushed through, and the determination that it took for me to not only start my education back up after a couple-year break of online school, but knowing that I may not be able to read the textbooks, and I may not be able to read the board, or I may not be able to see the slideshows. I surrounded myself with classmates and friends, and I communicated with instructors, and I put myself in a position where I wasn't going to let that disability keep me from accomplishing my dreams. There were many roadblocks that I've had to overcome. I got married, I got divorced, and I moved multiple times. As a student here, I had a house fire and lost everything. I lost pets, I lost a grandparent, and all of the things that could be good reasons to take a break or stop my education. They weren't good enough for me. I, alongside my classmates and my instructors, worked hard to maintain my educational journey through all of the roadblocks placed in front of me, and all while maintaining a very nice GPA. I worked full-time through 90% of my educational career here at NHSC. My entire associate's degree, I was full-time. And the majority of my bachelor's degree, I was a full-time student and a full-time employee. There was only a few semesters here at the end where I was part-time. But other than that, I was full-time. And I was determined to get my degree, continue my education, and gain the knowledge to better myself, to be the best version of myself, for my current employer, for future employers. The last section of the future pillar is industriousness. Industriousness really is all about hard work. And for me, I am a 110% person when it comes to my schoolwork. And a lot of the work that I do for even my job, I'm known as that student who, quote unquote, does too much, or known as that student who goes above and beyond just because I can. To me, that's just who I am. If I'm going to turn in an assignment, or if I'm going to do a project, or if I'm going to put my effort and heart and soul into something, I want to put as much of it in there as I can. To me, the way that I view hard work and knowledge is you get what you put in. And so if I'm only gonna half-ass throw something together, I'm not gonna get the knowledge and retain the education that I need. Whereas if I put 110% into it and I work my butt off on a project and I really research it and I really put my heart and soul in it. The Earth Lodge model pillar culture is made up of 3 sections: language, land, and respect. For the language piece, I obviously was required to take a language for my associates, which then translated into my bachelor's degree, and I chose Hidatsa 1 with Delvin Driver Jr. And I loved that class. I personally really enjoy learning languages. I think language is fun. And I know that the purpose of having students take the language and the history of the 3 affiliated tribes is really just to connect students to this place and the people and the land and if you're going to graduate from a tribal school, you really should have a base knowledge of the tribe and the people and the place that you're representing. And so I went into Hidatsa 1 really understanding this, and I went in excited to learn the language. Prior to working here and going to school here, I worked out at the casino, and my old supervisor, Irene, she spoke to me in Hidatsa many times. I can't tell you how many times she told me Nishub and Nashuds, and she spoke to me, and some of the words that she spoke, the first 100 times she said them, I didn't even know what the heck she was saying to me. But as we got closer and as I worked there longer, she really explained some of the words, and it was something fascinating to me, because the more you know of the language, the more you start to hear it. And I worked out at the casino for 3 or 4 years, and I didn't realize how much the language was actually being used. And once I started learning it, I started hearing it more. And so taking the class here at the college with Delvin Driver Jr. really just got me excited about the language. So for me, the language section of this pillar was not just taking a class to take a class to fulfill a portion of my degree plan. I took the class, yes, and I did learn in that class, and I enjoyed the class, but I was able to take that knowledge out into the community, and I was able to start hearing words and understanding language where I didn't have before. The second section of the culture pillar is land, and there's 2 things that really, I'm going to say, grounded me or humbled me in knowledge about land here. The first was Charlie Moran in tribal government. We went over many different things. We went over all of the different treaties, and obviously Fort Laramie Treaty got brought up. And at this point, I had been living on the MHA Nation's land for 9 years, and I've heard of the Fort Laramie Treaty before. It's all over. The Fort Laramie Treaty is part of MHA's logo. It is mentioned many times, but it's not explained. And if you didn't know what the Fort Laramie Treaty really was, it was just a thing that you heard about. You just knew it was a treaty. And that was kind of how it was for me. I had seen it, I had heard of it, but until Charlie's class, I didn't really know what the Fort Laramie Treaty was. And that was part ignorance, and that was part, I didn't research it myself. And so in tribal government, Charlie Moran really went into this treaty, and he really made sure that we understood land and what the reservation borders should have been, or what they were classified to be by the tribe back then. And he then goes into explaining the different things that have happened, whether it was Settlement Act of 1910 or different things in history that have taken pieces of land away. And he really talks about the reservation shrinking over the years down to what it is now. And in that class, I just got super interested about, I got pissed, I'm not gonna lie. That class, Charlie brought out some emotions in me that I just didn't know were harbored inside of me. That class sparked a fire in me and an anger in me because I just saw things from a completely different perspective. And he wasn't teaching angrily. He just brought knowledge to the table that I was oblivious to, and it just sparked something in me. And so Charlie Moran and tribal government seriously helped me understand the land. And then the second half of that is, as an employee, I was able to go on a cultural retreat this summer, and Mike Bartholomew was taking us for 2 days through the reservation and through, Bismarck, Killdeer, Mandaree, Newtown, and really just showing us the land. He really brought us through a timeline, and it took 2 days to go to all of these sites, laid out a timeline. And so although Charlie had gone over these things, you're sitting in a classroom, it's just not the same. But until you drive from one side of the reservation to the other side, and you are faced with the distance in a vehicle, and you realize that at some point vehicles weren't a thing, and at some point horses weren't a thing, and that traditionally, for their cultural purpose, they walked, and they did this despite North Dakota, despite everything that was put in front of them. And that experience was another eye-opening experience. The Earth Lodge model pillar culture is made up of 3 sections: language, land, and respect. For the language piece, I obviously was required to take a language for my associates, which then translated into my bachelor's degree, and I chose Hidatsa 1 with Delvin Driver Jr. And I loved that class. I personally really enjoy learning languages. I think language is fun. And I know that the purpose of having students take the language and the history of the 3 affiliated tribes is really just to connect students to this place and the people and the land. And if you're going to graduate from a tribal school, you really should have a base knowledge of the tribe and the people and the place that you're representing. And so I went into Hidatsa 1 really understanding this, and I went in excited to learn the language. Prior to working here and going to school here, I worked out at the casino, and my old supervisor, Irene, she spoke to me in Hidatsa many times. I can't tell you how many times she told me Nishub and Nashuds, and she spoke to me. And some of the words that she spoke, the first 100 times she said them, I didn't even know what the heck she was saying to me. But as we got closer and as I worked there longer, she really explained some of the words, and it was something fascinating to me, because the more you know of the language, the more you start to hear it. And I worked out at the casino for 3 or 4 years, and I didn't realize how much the language was actually being used. And once I started learning it, I started hearing it more. And so taking the class here at the college with Delvin Driver Jr. really just got me excited about the language. So for me, the language section of this pillar was not just taking a class to take a class to fulfill a portion of my degree plan. I took the class, yes, and I did learn in that class, and I enjoyed the class, but I was able to take that knowledge out into the community, and I was able to start hearing words and understanding language where I didn't have before. The second section of the culture pillar is land, and there's 2 things that really, I'm going to say, grounded me or humbled me in knowledge about land here. The first was Charlie Moran. In tribal government, we went over many different things. I mean, we went over all of the different treaties, and obviously Fort Laramie Treaty got brought up. And at this point, I had been living on the MHA Nation's land for 9 years, and I've heard of the Fort Laramie Treaty before. I mean, it's all over. The Fort Laramie Treaty is part of MHA's logo. I mean, it is mentioned many times, but it's not explained. And if you didn't know what the Fort Laramie Treaty really was, it was just a thing that you heard about. You just knew it was a treaty. And that was kind of how it was for me. I had seen it, I had heard of it, but until Charlie's class, I didn't really know what the Fort Laramie Treaty was. And that was part ignorance, and that was part, I didn't research it myself. And so in tribal government, Charlie Moran really went into this treaty, and he really made sure that we understood land and what the reservation borders should have been, or what they were classified to be by the tribe back then. And he then goes into explaining, the different things that have happened, whether it was Settlement Act of 1910 or different things in history that have taken pieces of land away. And he really talks about the reservation shrinking over the years down to what it is now. And in that class, I just got super interested about, I got pissed, I'm not gonna lie. That class, Charlie brought out some emotions in me that I just didn't know were harbored inside of me. That class sparked a fire in me and an anger in me because I just saw things from a completely different perspective. And he wasn't teaching angrily. He just brought knowledge to the table that I was oblivious to, and it just sparked something in me. And so Charlie Moran and tribal government seriously helped me understand the land. And then the second half of that is, as an employee, I was able to go on a cultural retreat this summer, and Mike Bartholomew was taking us for 2 days through the reservation and through, Bismarck, Killdeer, Mandaree, Newtown, and really just showing us the land. He really brought us through a timeline, and it took 2 days to go to all of these sites, laid out a timeline. And so although Charlie had gone over these things, you're sitting in a classroom, it's just not the same. But until you drive from one side of the reservation to the other side, and you are faced with the distance in a vehicle, and you realize that at some point vehicles weren't a thing, and at some point horses weren't a thing, and that traditionally, for their cultural purpose, they walked, and they did this despite North Dakota, despite everything that was put in front of them. And that experience was another eye-opening experience. The last section of the cultural pillar is respect. Respect is probably the one that emotionally, other than being angry, this section was, for me, understanding the cultural respects. And there's obviously a cultural respect for veterans, and there was obviously a cultural respect for elders, and even women are respected in a way as a matriarch society, and understanding and respecting women, it was just immensely wonderful to experience. there was one moment a few years back. For some context, I was able to get extremely close with a couple gentlemen who live in a group home in Williston. And these gentlemen all have intellectual or physical disabilities. And one of the gentlemen's lifelong bucket list items was to go to a powwow. And he may not have understood what a powwow was. He may not have understood the ins and outs of a powwow or what it was representing, but to him, he wanted to go and he just wanted to see it. He just wanted to sit and see. And I just knew this was something that I could help with. And so we arranged to bring 4 of the gentlemen, this man included. His name was Monty. And Monty was so excited to be coming to a powwow. And so we brought 4 gentlemen, and I got a hold of Dr. Carrie Hartman. And Carrie Hartman, without question, I asked if during intertribal, if there was any way that he could take Monty out to dance. And without question, Dr. Hartman said, absolutely. And so we sat on the bleachers and Monty was so excited. We didn't tell Monty for sure that he was going to dance, but he came over when he was done with his drum and he grabbed Monty and the 2 of them went out. And just to see the smile for Monty, and man, did this moment really grow my respect for Dr. Hartman. And when I was talking with people and watching people in a world outside of a powwow and outside of the reservation, people with physical and intellectual disabilities are looked at and pointed at and just so negatively. And to see a place where they could come and not only not be disrespected, but on a complete flip side, they were just respected and honored in a way that I just am not sure that they've ever experienced. We recorded the dancing of Monty and Dr. Hartman, of course, because this was Monty's dream to be at a powwow, and now he gets to say that he danced at one, and he just was so excited. And then after this, we went over to Res Lemonade, of course, and the boys wanted some lemonade, and we took all of them over. They just got regular lemonades, and we went to go pay, and Res Lemonade refused money, and they just said, no, we take care of our people with disabilities. It's just not, I'm not taking your money. And it was just one of those moments. My takeaways from MHA Nation, as I've lived here for 12 years, although I could probably make an entire list, I have 3 main things that I feel are important takeaways and lessons and teachings that have grown my knowledge and helped me develop into the woman that I am today. The first takeaway from MHA Nation was resiliency. And again, like I discussed before, being diagnosed with Stargardt's disease was traumatizing at first. I mean, I walked out of the office with sunglasses on because my eyes were dilated and got in the truck and I immediately broke down. And when you're given a diagnosis that's untreatable, uncurable, I mean, it's just one of those diagnoses that your easily able to fall into this depressive episode. I mean, it's so easy to do. But the thing that I've learned being here is that I am way more resilient than I thought I could be. And resiliency can be defined by the person. Every person in this room is resilient in one way or another. You have your own experiences, your own life lived traumas, and your own possibly medical diagnoses and life events and stepping stones that cracked in half, and you are able to be resilient in your own way. We all are resilient in our own way, and resiliency is something that I just feel like I gained immensely being here. It wasn't even just my diagnosis with Stargardt's. I mean, I was resilient when it came to my divorce, and I didn't skip a beat. I mean, I didn't stop working, I didn't stop going to school, and it was very traumatizing. And during that time, I did have support and I had people, but man, did it take resiliency to get through that. And it took resiliency to get through that with a smile on my face and with a positive attitude, and while maintaining my education and while still putting in my efforts at work. And I don't think that if I was surrounded by other people and another place, it would have been as easy to be as resilient. So for me, resiliency is definitely something that I have taken away and will continue to hold close to me well beyond my time here. The next thing that I am taking away is just an understanding of identity. You know, at the beginning of this, I explained my family, and you know, my mother and my father raised me, and they were divorced when I was 11. They've both remarried. My dad adopted me, and so it wasn't until I was much older, I was 19, almost 20, a week away from being 20, when I met my biological father for the first time. And it was really hard for me to identify with him or his culture. And part of that was out of respect for my father who raised me. That's my dad. He's the one that kissed all my wounds and picked me up and brushed my hair and braided my hair before bed and made sure that I had structure, and he gave me my work ethic. And my dad is my dad. And it just took a long time for me to understand that by allowing myself to identify with or even have pieces of my biological father and his family, it wasn't disrespecting the man who raised me. It took me a long time to get there. And so being here really sparked an interest for me. I knew that my biological father was. Where do I go from here? Now that I'm graduating, I have two big things. In June of 2025, I will be moving back home to Washington State. My brother, who, as explained earlier, is my rock, my best friend, my protector, my biggest supporter, and he has started a family. He's settled down, and he's got this beautiful family that I cannot be away from. I can't not be a part of that. So for many reasons, but that being one of the biggest reasons, I am choosing to move home to Washington, and that's going to be an adjustment for me, but I am excited. I am ready to build a life in Washington alongside my brother and his little family. Where will I go from here educationally? Long story short, I'm not sure. I do plan on going on for my master's, but Miss Burnell Buckman has confused me with her classes, and I've changed my master's program probably 4 times thanks to Burnell. I was dead set. I came in for my bachelor's, and within 6 months I was dead set that I was going in for a master's in leadership. My experience with the leadership pipeline and growing as a leader here through my career and working on regional boards of directors and just growing within my leadership skills. Leadership is something that every business can benefit from. And as much as I love leadership, a master's in leadership doesn't really translate to a whole lot of careers. Although it's useful as like a backup degree. So I'm still considering that as maybe a second master's degree. But after my leadership, I was really dead set on marketing. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna go in for marketing. I love, when I look at my job now and I look at the things that I enjoy about my job, although there are many, I really enjoy being creative. I'm a very creative person, and I enjoy putting together flyers. I enjoy advertising. I put together our Facebook page for our financial aid office, and I really just enjoy having a space to have a creative outlet. I enjoy having a space to be creative. And although I had not yet at that time taken a marketing class, it was something that I just really was excited about. And so of course I took marketing, and I took that with Miss Burnell, and I loved that class. I did, but I think I got more excited about like the graphic design aspect more so than the going into businesses and like analyzing their marketing. But then my absolute hands down 100% favorite class I ever took here as a student was macroeconomics. And let me tell you, I hated microeconomics. That class just bored me. It did not challenge me. I didn't get anything from microeconomics. But macroeconomics was something that I just fell in love with. And obviously by the game that I created, economics was a part of that. Macroeconomics, it was all about world trade and business. And I just got passionate about world economics, worldly international connections, and I contemplated going for an economics degree. I found a few, but again, an economics degree doesn't lead to a whole lot of jobs unless you want to work in a bank or insurance, or just didn't seem exciting. I want to find a master's program that helps me in a career that I want. And I guess the problem right now is I'm not really sure what that career is, because I have too many things that I'm excited about. Through my experience with ACES, the last year and a half, 2 academic years, all of last year and then just this semester for this year, I was the public relations officer for ACES. And I genuinely think that media communications or public relations could be something that I wouldn't mind. It kind of brings together marketing and communication and leadership all together. I think once I get settled in Washington and test out, maybe find one of these jobs or careers and try to get my foot in the door with maybe a business, just so I can really feel it out before I spend all the money for a master's program. But yeah, educationally, I'm not sure. I know that I want to go on for my master's, and I do not want to wait. Man, that 5-year wait between my associates and my bachelor's zapped some stuff out of me. So I don't want to wait. a 5-year break, thinking no more than a year, just so that I can get to Washington in June, get settled, get myself into a job and start saving. And I'm hoping that, within 6 months to a year of getting to Washington, I can start my master's program. But I think with all of my takeaways from MHA, all that I've learned, my degrees, my experience, all of my certifications, my resume, and a couple good recommendation letters, I don't see getting a job to be too difficult. So that's my plan now that I've graduated. And I look forward to seeing where my journey goes beyond. I've reached the end of my business capstone presentation. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here to celebrate my journey. I will be available for questions, and immediately following that, you're more than welcome to come up and view any of the projects that I have completed throughout my 4-year degree.